This is Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review with your MLB Early Lines report for the games taking place on Wednesday, September the 14th. Let's get right to business. We're going to look at, well, I'll be honest, it's not a great matchup. It's not a sexy matchup. It's the who gives a shit matchup of the night, potentially, in Major League Baseball. But I think we might have a betting angle that we could profit from. So that's why we're talking about it. I'm talking about the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Cincinnati Reds on Wednesday night. And yeah, this is not going to look like a game that anyone's going to want to watch, but doesn't mean you can't make money from it. And we've talked about the guy making the start here for the Brewers on Wednesday night, Junior Guerra, more than one occasion this year on our early lines videos here at Sportsbook Review, and I am telling you, he has been a guy that's put money in my pocket this season. Hopefully he's been able to put some money in yours too, if you've been tailing some of my recommendations here, because he's pitched very well for the Milwaukee Brewers. They haven't had a lot of their starters give them, decent outings more often than not, and give this team a legitimate chance to win. Well, Junior Guerra's done that for the Brewers. A 2.96 ERA for him in 19 starts. Milwaukee's gone 13-6 in those 19 games, including 8-2 for Milwaukee in Junior Guerra's 10 road starts this season. He pitched against Cincinnati once earlier this season, way back in May, and the Brewers got the victory in that game. And Guerra, you look at what he's done his last couple starts against the Cardinals and the Pirates, just allowing 3 runs in 8.1 innings over those 2 starts combined. So Junior Guerra's just doing what he's done most of the season. He's pitching well enough to give his team a chance, and that's all you can ask for. And I think he's going to have a pitching edge here over Tim Adelman. I'm not sold on Tim Adelman being a starting rotation caliber pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds. You actually look at his last 3 starts, they've been somewhat decent against Pittsburgh, the Cardinals, and the Angels in his last 3 outings, but Cincinnati's still not really winning games in bunches with Adelman on the mound, as evidenced by the fact that they're just 2-5 in his last 7 starts. That's not very good. And then you look at his advanced numbers. That ERA is sitting around there at 3.88. That's okay in terms of ERA, but the walks, nearly 3 walks per 9 innings. You look at the strikeouts, not even 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, so he's not getting a ton of swings and misses. And then those advanced numbers, when you compare it to the ERA, which is 3.88, the FIP is 5.88, the xFIP 5.37. That tells you this guy's probably not pitching as well as his ERA indicates, and I think Guerra's simply the better pitcher here in this matchup, and a reasonable price here to back the Milwaukee Brewers. You can get them as a small road favorite around minus 115 in this game. Certainly would side with Milwaukee in this game to get the victory. And another game that stuck out to me on the Wednesday, September 14 slate, the Minnesota Twins taking on the Detroit Tigers. We got bet against versus bet against here from a pitching perspective. Tyler Duffy seems to be really running on fumes at this stage of the baseball campaign. It's been a real rough stretch for him. He's been roughed up big time in his last 3 outings. Allowing 16 runs on 16 hits in his last 11.2 innings of work. That's just simply abysmal. That's simply awful pitching right there from Tyler Duffy. Not very good. The home run ball's been an issue. 4 home runs given up in his last 11.2 innings of work. 2 of those 3 games going up and over the total, including a game against this Detroit team, which was one of those bad 3 outings for Duffy in his last 3 starts. He faced Detroit on August 24th, 6 runs allowed on 7 hits, and lasted just 3 innings in that game. Certainly don't think a quick turnaround look for the Detroit Tigers here against Duffy just a few weeks later is going to result in much difference for the struggling Minnesota righty. I think he's going to have a tough night here, Duffy, facing this Detroit lineup. On the flip side, Anibal Sanchez, to me, has had, I guess he's pitched a little bit more reasonably since returning to the starting rotation. Remember, he was awful early on in the season. We were cashing a ton of over bets, a ton of side plays against Anibal Sanchez in his starts, and there's no doubt he's been a little bit more serviceable in his recent stretch with the Detroit Tigers, but to me, he's still not got very good peripheral numbers. He's still not getting a ton of strikeouts. Walks have been an issue at times. You look at his last 4 outings, he's given up at least 3 runs in all of those games. Not exactly pitching deep as well. 5.25 and 5 innings pitched for Anibal Sanchez in his last 3 starts. This will be now the 3rd time this season, including the 3rd time in as many months, that he'll be facing the Minnesota Twins lineup. So I think Minnesota's going to be able to put together some very good swings against him. And Minnesota, despite their struggles, despite the fact they've had awful starting pitching, a terrible bullpen as well, and that's certainly going to come into play. Detroit has the chance not only to connect a few times off Duffy, but that bullpen for Minnesota, which is just an absolute mash unit, should be susceptible to giving up runs to Detroit in the latter stages as well. But this Minnesota lineup hasn't stopped hitting. I mean, they've still done a pretty good job of producing this lineup. I mean, Brian Dozier has had a tremendous season for the Minnesota Twins. He's been great. Trevor Plouffe's been hitting a little bit better lately. Miguel Sano has had some clutch hits in recent games and recent weeks for the Minnesota Twins. So the lineup's been the bright spot for this team. They've still been able to score some runs at times this season, particularly in the last month or so, and I think they should be able to do so here against Anibal Sanchez in this particular game. Total of this game between the Twins and Tigers, 9.5, shaded a little bit to the over. Still a bet worth making, I think, to expect some runs in bunches at Comerica Park on Wednesday night. We'll look to the over at 9.5 between the Twins and the Tigers on Wednesday night. Other games really that you could be looking at, it's hard not to maybe take a small flyer with the Rays maybe in Toronto for that early Wednesday afternoon start. Like, Cobb's been pretty good considering he's been out for so long due to injury, just recently returned to the rotation, and he actually pitched well against the Jays, one of the teams he's faced since returning down at Tropicana Field. So I think with Cobb on the mound, the Rays have a chance to hang in that game. Marco Estrada has been not quite the same pitcher the last month or so. It just seems like it's a little bit of an inflated price, and Toronto's not beating teams easily these days. Look at the first game of this series against Tampa Bay. They squeaked out a 3-2 win. Didn't come easily for them. Maybe Tampa is a very big live underdog price there, is worth a shot. It's not a strong opinion for me, but just at the price, maybe a little value on the Rays there as a big dog on Wednesday. And also, Kevin Gausman really is pitching better lately for the Baltimore Orioles. That being said, it's just a bad matchup. I would have been willing to take him against another Boston starter, but Rick Porcello, especially at Fenway Park, is not exactly a guy I'm looking to fade or looking to bet against right now, so ended up leaving that game alone in the end. All right, that's my look at MLB early lines for the games on Wednesday, September 14th. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, and until next time, enjoy the games and good luck.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.